Okay, all right. So let me start today's lecture. So any questions with regard to these results? No, okay. Then let me start with the next lecture. It's about price finding mechanisms. And this is a central topic in economics is how to find the price, how to price something in markets, right? How does a buyer and seller agree on a price of a good? And this literally happens everywhere in economics and also in daily life, right? If you walk into a store, if you participate in eBay and all that stuff. So in very big markets, as we saw yesterday, this is mostly driven by these supply and demand curves where we have some market equilibrium that actually tells us how much quantity is efficiently produced and at what price that is, right? And we had like all these different considerations about whether the market can actually achieve this situation by looking at the different market power of these companies, right? So this is in a highly competitive market, and the result could look different if there's a monopoly. Then the monopoly can set the price however they want. But here we are talking about an equilibrium price of the competitive market that is converging to the intersection between supply and demand. But now, this works very well for big markets. We have a lot of buyers, a lot of sellers, and this actually, transfers a lot of information. So there's kind of a predictable market price once we know the supply and demand curves. And there's only this sensible price where actually the buyers and sellers agree to trade. But then there's also different markets, for example, this one, where I guess most of us have no idea what that is, but somebody wants to have $5,100 for this. Who would be willing to pay for this $5,100? You are? Why?
Oh, sorry. If I believe I can sell it for more than $5,100, then I would be a buyer, right?
Yeah, but why would you believe that?
I mean, if it's trading at 5.1K right now, then like it's clearly someone is.
I mean, that's the offer, right? Like you don't know whether it's just I mean, that is maybe also what's happening often. Like somebody posts a ridiculous price, and somebody else thinks this is actually the market price and buys it, want to sell it later. But of course, it could be the best deal in your lifetime, right? Like I don't know, like maybe these figures are actually some other people would pay like $1 million for it, right? I don't know.
I mean, there were NFT rocks selling for millions of dollars, so you never know, right?
Exactly, yeah. But I think only because it has a high price, it doesn't mean that you can sell it higher, right? So that is what I want to transfer. Like some of us, they have no idea, and you need to have some additional private information about this. If I showed you, like, I don't know, a box of milk or something, I think most of us could say that, okay, after this price, I'm not ever going to buy it. Below that price, it's actually a good deal or something, right? But yeah, in that case, you want to say something, yeah?
So my friend have collected this, and they actually do auction. So this price could be that they are limited edition as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is where I'm heading at. Maybe. So these things will be auctioned off, right? So there's like not these kind of competitive. There's not a lot of buyers and there's not a lot of sellers. Maybe there's only one seller and maybe only a few buyers. Do you know whether this price would be good or bad? I don't know. Do you have any idea? It can be higher?
It's quite high. It could be as low as 100, few thousands, or even higher than this is possible as well.
Okay, so basically everything. Okay. All right. Yeah. So these are kind of difficult markets in a way, right? Like today we focus on markets where few buyers and sellers, and also only few trades happen, right? Like we have in these big markets. Thousands of goods are traded every day. A lot of data is aggregated, and prices can be priced very precisely. Mostly are standardized goods, And there are some other examples here. One big one is where the government sells radio frequencies to broadcasters. This is in certain intervals. It's like huge events because there's only a few buyers, right? There's only a few broadcasters that are actually interested. For example, in these, I think they are called spectrum auctions. For example, if 5G releases, you need to buy a certain bandwidth. I'm not an expert there, but and they trade for like hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Like one of these frequencies, and you normally have only a few companies in the nation that actually want to participate, actually able to participate, and you only have one seller, right? You only have the government that actually is able to enforce who can use these frequencies. Another example would be paintings by famous artists, where a lot of people just, they don't care about that too much, and they don't want to participate, and then, it comes down to maybe a room full of people that actually are willing to buy this, and then of course the painting is kind of unique, often in a way, so you only have one of these things around. Then also another question is, if you imagine that you have an oil well on sale, but you have no idea how much oil there is actually there, and imagine you are the seller. It's very hard for you to actually make a fixed price for this, right? Because you could be underestimating the amount of oil and potentially give out the well for a fraction of what it would be worth, or the other way around, that you charge way too much and then like nobody will buy it. So let's look at a simple model here. Let's say Selena wants to sell one item of a good. And there's only two buyers, Alice and Bob. And each buyer has a secret valuation, VA and VB, and how much they are willing to pay for the item, right? So this is like some notion of this true valuation within you. Like how much are you willing to pay the good? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have the money for it, right? It could be that you are actually valuing a good for a lot, but you don't have the financial resources to actually bid that, right? So valuation, you have to think of like some internal concept of an agent that is expressing how much that agent is actually valuing the good. So in this case, we also equal that with the budget, right? Like we say that each agent can also has the money to bid their valuation. But as I said, it could be different, right? It could be that you don't have enough money, but you would like to bid more. Those are called budget constraints, where like in more complex models that would matter. But right now we just focus on the valuation. So how much is that good actually valued? How much do you value this? And now the question is, how does Selena actually optimally sell this item in this environment? Let's make some more assumptions just to make it easier. Let's say all of Selena's income is profit, so she doesn't have to think about costs. She for some reason already has the good. She doesn't need to produce it. Everything that is being that she has as income is profit. And let's make another assumption that Alice and Bob each have a random valuation between 0 and 1. So the valuation will be randomly drawn for each of the agents, for Alice and Bob, and it can be between 0 and 1. And it's actually uniformly distributed in this case. So every valuation has the same probability. This makes it a little bit more easy to convey the intuition here. The valuations are secret, so Alice doesn't know how much Bob is valuing the good, and also Selena doesn't know the valuations of the other participants, right? This is the fundamental problem of this whole thing, that if the seller would know the valuations, then they could simply charge that, right? They could say, you are willing to pay $20, so give me $20 and you get it. But of course, that's not how life goes, right? Like, I have no idea how much you are willing to pay for something. And if I ask, you might just lie to me, right? Like of course you have some incentive to say it's actually lower if you know that I will be, pricing the good this way. So the simplest solution here is that Selena posts a price P and sells it to the first taker, right? She just posts a price, says I want to have P, and then sells to whoever says that they are wanting the good for that. And now the question is, what is her optimal price here? What is the optimal price P? And the optimal price is that this one that is actually maximizing her expected revenue. And the expected revenue is the price times the probability of her making a sale. Right? That's quite intuitive. And since we make this nice assumption about the distribution of values, we actually know how much the probability of making a sale is. It's 1 minus p squared. So I'm not going to prove that to you. I will upload the speaker notes after the module with all the proofs, if you're interested. I want to keep it here with the intuition, but it's quite easy to see because the probability of selling or that somebody has a valuation higher than P is actually P because of this nice uniformly distribution, and she wants to only sell it to 1, so it's kind of P squared to actually not make the sale. Sorry that it's smaller than P. Probability that the valuation is lower than P is P. So it's P squared, and to not make a sale, so it's 1 minus P squared to make the sale. And now if we want to have the expected revenue, we have to multiply that by P. And then we do something, we maximize it for the optimal P, which I briefly showed in the Cournot example. It's actually quite easy. You will see in the notes if you take a look. And then you will see that the optimum point here, the expected revenue is 0.38. So we will see that we can actually do better here with an auction, right? So this is simply her posting a price and maximizing her expected revenue. And the solution is auctions. Hopefully they go better than this. So we will see that auctions can be superior to just posting a price. And we stay within this very small model and very, very simple model. And we discuss 4 important auction formats, which I think is very important generally for you to know, because you will find those everywhere, also in daily life. The question is how to make buyers actually reveal their secret valuations, right? Like how or which kind of auctions are designed such that you don't have an incentive to lie towards the auctioneer, which we will see is a very, very strong result in one of the auction types. Then we will also look at bid shilling, what that is. Then we briefly look at the revenue equivalence theorem, which is a big, let's say, result in mechanism design or in auction theory in general. And then we will, talk a little bit about which guides of or which kind of auction formats can be used in practice and which are the benefits and drawbacks here. So let's say we're now into auctions. Let's say Alice and Bob are the bidders and they submit bids based on their own valuations, right? So again, like they don't have any idea about the valuations of each other, and Selena doesn't know doesn't know the valuations of Bob or Alice. The rule is that Selena, the auctioneer, selects the winner to allocate the item to, right? The winner's is actually a payment, so the winner's payment is a function of the bids, right? So whoever wins has to pay by some rule of their bid, right? There are some different rules which we will look at. And in general, an auction is a competitive game for buyers where the seller makes the rules. So you actually participate in an auction and you know the rules beforehand, right? We talked about this common knowledge thing. And we assume here that everybody has to adhere to the rules, right? Like in reality, there might be some problems with that assumption, but for us, we just assume that the rules are known and the rules are also enforced. So there are two broad classes of auctions. There's the static auction, where bidders submit their bid at the same time. And this is basically, imagine that I have something to auction off, this bottle of water, and I ask you how much would you be willing to pay for this? And you should write your bid on a piece of paper, also have some identifier on it so I know who actually won. And then you fold it, put it into an envelope, and I collect all the envelopes, and then I open one envelope after the other, and actually look at each of the bids. And then the question is, by which rule? But then I decide who won, right? So there's no interaction here. You cannot react to some other bids. You have to make one choice, and everybody makes that choice at the same time. We saw that yesterday in a static. It's a static game. Then we also have dynamic auction, where bidders actually submit bids over time. That is another very common thing. I could ask somebody, so who is willing to pay 5 cents for it? Who's willing to pay 7 cents? And then, you basically somehow signal me whether you are still in the auction or whether you would be willing to pay or not. And there, of course, you can basically observe the behavior of the other ones, and you can change your strategy based on, maybe you see at the very beginning, like everybody's super excited for it, so you could think that, oh, maybe this bottle of water is more worth than I thought, or you can already see at very low prices that almost nobody's interested, so you think that, oh, okay, maybe we are almost getting to the true valuation here. So we will be discussing 4 auction formats today: the static auctions with a first price payment rule and with a second price payment rule, and then the dynamic auction with ascending price, which is the English auction or the English auctions, and with descending price, the Dutch auction. Who has heard of the Dutch auction? Okay, a few, nice. And the English auction? Okay, probably, yeah, okay, a little bit more. Who knows the first price payment rule? Okay, and the second price payment rule, I guess also not. So the first price payment rule, it's quite easy. It sounds more fancy than it is. Basically, you pay what you bid, right? If you bid for something 10, then you will pay also 10. The second price payment rule is the least intuitive in a way. You pay actually the second highest bid. So if there's like 3 bidders and one bids 5, the other bids 10, and the last one bids 15, the one with that bid 15 wins, but they are actually only paying 10 because it was the second highest bid. And we will see that this leads to very interesting and very, very cool results in a way. But it's kind of counterintuitive, right? The Dutch auction format became very popular in the Netherlands. I think up until today, they still sell a lot of tulips, especially on the tulip market. They sell a lot of tulips with that, where basically the price decreases. So the price starts very high and then decreases, and then you can say when you are willing to buy it. Right? And the first one that says, I'm willing to buy it, then the auction stops and you get the price. And the English auction is the other way around. The price starts low, everybody stays in the auction, and then the price goes higher, and one after the other, people drop out, and the last one that is still in then wins. So let's look at the second price auction first. The question is, why should we make this weird rule? It's the least intuitive format. but it's strategically the simplest for bidders. And that is a very important factor because as we saw yesterday, we cannot, so we will also derive some optimal choice in the first price auction, but we will see that this is much less intuitive than this one. And as you saw yesterday, people have a little bit of trouble computing the optimal choice and making the best decision. So the second price auction is actually offering some nice and very intuitive strategy for bidders. And the strategy is very easy. Just bid your valuation truthfully. We will see why that is actually working. And yeah, a bidder generally, and that is, I think, also quite intuitive, wants to maximize their expected profit, right? So they want to, their own valuation, so whatever that thing is worth to you, minus the price paid, and that should ideally have a surplus, right? So you want to pay less than what you like the good, or how much you value the good, because otherwise, if you pay exactly what you value the good, you have a profit of 0. Right, so you want that distance to be as big as possible. So let's look intuitively at the second price auction. And there we can say that there's a truthful equilibrium where it's a dominant strategy. So it's even stronger than just a Nash equilibrium. It's like a dominant strategy. So you don't even have to care about what other people do to bid truthfully, to bid your valuation. And when we look at this situation, we can immediately say that you should never overbid, right? You should never bid more than your valuation. Because your profit can only be 0. If you lose, then you don't get the good. Or if you win, then it might be negative because you actually get the good at a higher price than your valuation, which actually makes you sad, right? Like you paid more for it than you liked the good. So that's bad. And if you look at situation 1, in the case that Bob's bid is higher than your valuation, bidding truthfully or underbidding both lead to losing and having a revenue of 0. Right, so in that situation, you don't want the good because Bob's bid is higher, and obviously Bob likes the good better than you do, so you don't actually want to win. So bidding truthful actually leads to the fact that you will lose, but that's fine. The interesting situation is situation 2, where Bob's bid is lower than your valuation, and any bid between the two values lead to you winning and having the same profit. Because even though that you won with your valuation, so you bid your valuation, and in that situation you win, but you pay only Bob's bid. Right? So you don't have any disadvantage of actually bidding your valuation because you don't fear to actually pay that and have a 0 profit, but you pay Bob's bid, and the whole difference here is actually your profit, which makes you happy. So in both situations, we can say that bidding your true valuation is the optimal thing to do. Let's look at the expected revenue. So Selena's expected revenue is the expected value of the second highest valuation, right? So that is also quite intuitive because the highest valuation will win, the bid of the highest valuation will win, but she will only get the bid of the second highest valuation, right? Does that make sense? Because that's the rule of the game, right? And for 2 independent variables uniformly sampled from 0 to 1, and there we can like bank a little bit on this nice uniform distribution, we know, and this is also shown in the lecture notes, that the expected value of the minimum of the 2 values is 1/3. But this is not quite as good as posting a price, where we can remember the expected value, she was able to gain an expected revenue of 0.38. And Why not? Because this auction format actually turns out to be not optimal for the auctioneer here. But we can make it optimal by introducing a so-called reserve price. And a reserve price, so if nobody wins above the reserve price R, nobody wins. Right? There's some price that she's posting where she says that if the price is below that, or if no of the bids are higher than this, I'm not going to sell it. Right? That is, I think, I'm not sure whether that's possible in eBay. I mean, basically, you could say where this auction should start, and that is kind of a reserve price, right? Where you say that, okay, I want to sell my laptop, but I'm going to start the auction at $1,000, which basically means you're not selling below that, right? You're not starting at zero. If one bid is above R, the payment is R, right? Because we have this kind of second payment rule, where you could also think of it like Selena is actually participating in the auction herself, and she's posting a bit of R. Because here R, if only one bid is above R, then R is basically the second bid. So the rule still stays the same. There's the second payment rule. If both bids are above R, the payment is the second highest bid still, and intuitively that means that R doesn't matter, right? Because both valuations are higher, R is somewhere at the bottom, so nobody cares about that. And there's the fact that under any reserve price R, it is still optimal to bid truthfully, and if Selena sets R to 0.5, in that case of uniform distribution, the expected revenue for her is 0.42, which is actually better, right? So we can make the auction also better, or we can make the auction better than just posting a price. And again, the proof I won't show here, like mathematically, but intuitively we can think of this situation. So we have 4 different situations, everything that can happen. In the first situation, both valuations are below R, and we set it to one half. In the second situation, both of the valuations are above R. In the third situation, R is exactly in the middle of both the valuations. And situation 4, it's the same, but the valuations are reversed, right? And since it's a uniform distribution, we know that every of these situations happen with 25% probability. So in the first situation, it is actually kind of a bummer for Selena, because there are some real bids. There's valuation 1 and valuation 2, but she's not selling. Right? So in this situation, she's losing out by posting R. She says that I have a reserve price, then there's some bidding going on, but then she has to announce, okay, I will not sell. Situation 2, the R doesn't matter because R is below V1, V2. So the whole auction basically happens in this area, and it is as if R never existed. But in situation 3, she actually gets more because she gets R instead of something that is smaller than R. Because R is basically injected as the second highest price. The same here. So intuitively, we can say that she loses in 25% of the cases, but there's 2 situations where she actually wins compared to the other situation. Intuitively, that means these effects kind of lead to she wins more often than she loses by posting a reserve price. So for her, she can actually increase her profit. Mike?
You said in the first situation, like the only time that she loses is 25% of the time, which is the first situation, right? And then you said 50% of the time she wins, but it seems like 75% of the time, if I'm not wrong, because like in situation 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4, there's a sell in every time, right?
In 3, 4, and 2, the good is sold.
Yeah, And in all cases, it's sold in a price that's greater than R.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
so the profit is in 75% of the cases.
So I'm not saying that. So what I'm saying is that in 50% the cases, introducing R actually leads to a different result in the game. Because if R hasn't existed, then she would getting something in here, right? The same here. So in these two situations, she clearly wins. She gets more money by introducing R. Because she gets R.
Okay.
In this situation, R doesn't matter. Like she gets the same as without posting R. So in only one situation, she actually loses out by posting R.
V1 and V2 represent the valuation of Alice and Bob, right?
Yeah.
So okay, I'll think about it. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. We can also discuss later then. Yeah.
Hi. So one question is just related to the research on this topic. Are there any studies where the participant making the bid has some sort of induced bias, or the bias is discovered because price R was already stated, meaning that perhaps because R was already, put at, let's say $100, maybe the participant would have, bid $200?
Yeah, that's a nice question. So now you're kind of referring a little bit to like behavioral biases in a way, because there's like the so-called thing is anchor effect, where basically by just posting some weird value, and this value has been shown that it doesn't actually need to be like even useful, people kind of anchor themselves to this, right? So if in the same auction the thing started at $1,000, people think like, oh, it must be somewhere between $1,000 and $10,000. But if it started at 100, they would think that it's between 100 and 1,000, right? And a lot of people are rational enough to say that, well, no, let me get some more information. It's like 1,000 is way too much. But you can trick a few people that only work based on heuristics. And for example, if you have this anchoring effect, then by just seeing the price of 5,100 before, you think it must be worth a lot. Maybe I bid 7,000. But even though you don't actually know anything about the good. So yeah, there's a lot of research about these funny things.
Got it. Thank you. One more quick question.
Yeah.
So just to clarify it on this diagram. So I think I understood his question or his point. We're just trying to see how does she lose 25% of the cases, meaning like in situation one? Because I guess in my head I would imagine that Selena would actually price in R already. Like she would know what her profit is before defining that R, right?
I don't understand.
Yeah, so maybe I just need some clarification on how situation one is that she kind of loses.
So she doesn't know V1 and V2, right? She has no idea.
Got it.
So she starts off the auction and says, I will put R at 0.5. But she doesn't, like, these are just a situation that can happen. Of course, when we play this game once, one of these situations actually happen, right? Because then we randomly draw the values, and then we will see whatever situation we had. But if we talk about expected revenue, we pretend that we play this game 100 times, right? And in that situation, all these situations become equally likely, and then we can actually see that in 50% of the cases, she actually gains by getting by posting an R, and in 25% of the cases she loses out. But since she wins more often than she loses, and we play this game often enough, over time, it is sure that she wins.
Got it. So like it was overpriced. Like she set her price way too high, and people didn't want to bid essentially.
Yeah, in that situation she did. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, the choosing R as 0.5, did we do that to maximize the expected revenue, or was just like to simplify the example?
0.5 is actually to maximize the revenue. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, because I mean, my first thought was, well, you choose R as 0.38, which was the expected revenue of posting a price. But yeah, does the document go more in depth on why 0.5 is the...
So why it's exactly 0.5,
Yeah.
we need to look a little bit more deeply into the uniform distribution. And then we need to maximize, the uniform distribution on the PDF and CDF on certain areas, and then we will find out that 0.5 actually maximizes it. But if we draw the valuations from some different distribution, then this R might change. It's just much easier, like it's the simplest thing to show, and it like the intuition holds, right? Like there's some R where you put R to some value depending on the distribution, and she's actually willing to lose in some of the situations, but she's exploiting the fact that she's winning in more of the situations. Okay, nice. Okay, let's talk about the different auction rules that there exist. There's the English clock auction, where basically Selena is starting at a low price, and she's continually raising the price. And at any price, you decide whether to stay or to leave. So in the clock auction, English clock auction, you basically have your hand up, and I will raise the price. And as only if you have your hand up, you're still in the game. But if you take your hand down, it means you don't want to participate anymore. If you leave, you may not return. That's just to make it easier so that there's not too much switching around. But basically, if you're out, you're out. But if you're in, you keep your hand up. And if you're the last one in the auction, you win, and you pay the price at which the second to last bidder left. Right? So we can see that this is actually a dynamic form of the second price auction that we saw before. Because if you win, you don't pay you don't pay the price where you're still in, but you pay the price from before. And that also means that, yeah, they are strategically equivalent, which is a very nice feature because, I mean, in general, if you think about this truth-telling strategy, it's a very nice property for the bidder, right? You don't have to think about how do I bid. Like, I know I want the good for 100, but how do I bid now? Like, how should I mingle with this 100 to optimally get the good? No, the strategy is super easy. If you want the good for 100, just bid 100. Super easy. And in the English clock auction, it is a dominant strategy to only stay in the auction until the price reaches your valuation. And once it reaches your valuation, you drop out of the auction, which is strategically equivalent to just bid your valuation. And there's also another property that we don't have time to show, that the expected revenue in this situation is the same for Selena as before. And these formats are so-called revenue equivalent. So let's look at shill bidding, and there we already start a little bit into the problems that some of these auction formats can have. So the second price and the English auction are very popular among theorists, right? Because you can analyze them very nicely. You get a very clear prediction of what people should do. But it's not so popular among practitioners. And one reason is that both of them are very prone to shill bidding. And those are basically bidders that just act on behalf of the auctioneer and drive up the price. And you could argue that this is similar to the reserve price, where also Selena is driving up the price. But here she announces it beforehand, and that doesn't change, and everybody knows that there's this reserve price. But just imagine that I will hold the auction here. We have two participants. One participant, I'm selling off my MacBook. One participant puts a bid of $5 or whatever, and the other one at 20. And I collect both of these envelopes, I open them, and I see, okay, one is bidding 20, and the second one is bidding 5. so I have to sell it for 5. I don't like that. So what I do is I actually add another bid that says 19. So I can now sell the MacBook for 19 instead of 5. And you can see that in reality, this is a big problem, right? Maybe I want to have somebody in the room that actually only acts to push up the price. And with the second price rule, this is of course a big problem, because the person that actually drives up the price is not the one winning, right? They can drive up the price for the auctioneer, and they are not winning the good. And this is so-called shill bidding. It is illegal, but people find their way. And also, if we think later, if we talk about front running and blockchain applications, that is of course a huge issue. Mike?
Wouldn't that be like some kind of front running?
Yeah. Yep. We will talk about that later.
The concept is the same for shill.
Front running is just a way to do it.
Okay. But because it's based on private information, right?
Yeah. And what exactly?
In this case, like you mentioned, okay, you received 2 bids and you notice, okay, there's 2 bids. I will put one here. If someone else is an open bid, they could do it themselves, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that is exactly the difference. So we will talk about front running, but so the way I phrased it was I did shill bidding by front running, right? Because I knew the bids and I put my other bid in. But if you imagine that it's a room and everybody bids simultaneously, it doesn't need to be front running, right? It even cannot be front running if we are sitting here, because you would see the bid of the highest person, and then you cannot pretend that something else happened before that because we all saw it. But yeah, the two concepts are very related.
So in the case which you mentioned, like shill bidding, if, for example, one sets 5, another sets 20, and auctioneer does the shill bidding for 19, in that case, who wins? The good?
No, that's the problem. That's the whole problem. The person that bid 20 still wins. But they are not paying 5, they are paying 19.
Oh, yeah. So, thank you. Got it.
Let's look at the first price auction. And this is, in a way, the much more intuitive auction format, right? This is what we see, I think, mostly in, I don't know how it is today, but in eBay, or like it's very intuitive. You bid something, you say, I'm willing to bid 20, and then you win the good, and you get it for 20, right? All bidders, in that sense, let's still talk about the sealed bid, where everybody puts their bid into an envelope, submit their bid simultaneously, and the highest bidder wins, right? So just with the example from before, I take these 2 envelopes. We have this bid of 20. We have a shill bid, let's say, of 19, just as before, and we have the bid of 5. What happens is that the one with 20 wins again, but they are not paying 19, the second highest price. They are just paying 20, because that's what they bid. One of the results, of the theoretical results, is that bidding in the first price auction is not truthful. And that is kind of quite intuitive if you think about it. Like, bidding truthfully can never be optimal, because every time you win, you gain nothing, right? Because the good is you value the good at 100, you bid 100, you win, you pay 100, you have a surplus of 0. And that is actually a big problem for decision makers in real life, right? Because you actually don't know you want to have the good for 100, but if you get it for 100, you're actually not very happy. So you need to underbid, right, to actually make some surplus here. And that is what I'm saying here. Underbidding is strictly better, because you only win sometimes, but if you do, you actually have a surplus. Does that make sense? Nice. So again, we won't show that mathematically, but the equilibrium strategy here is that it's a Nash equilibrium for each bidder to bid half their valuation. And as we remember from before, from yesterday, Nash equilibrium is a set of strategies where no single player has an incentive to deviate, can actually increase their expected profit by deviating. And even if I say this is quite counterintuitive, right? Like, why would you want the good for 100 and you bid only 50? That sounds weird. There's some intuition here. If you bid 0, the winning probability is 0. If you bid your valuation, your profit is 0. So that is the same as bad as not winning, right? Because you don't get anything. Hence, there must be some sweet spot between 0 and 1, or between 0 and your valuation for your expected profit to be maximal. And it turns out that bidding half of your valuation is actually maximizing this expected value, where you bid basically where you win in half of the time. For the expected revenue, so let's assume we prove that, and we can prove that that this is the case. This is the Nash equilibrium. We assume that each of the bidder bid half of their valuation. So we can look at Selena's expected revenue again, and it's basically 1/2 of the maximum of both of these valuations, right? Because the half comes from the fact that Alice and Bob will only bid half of their valuation, and then of course the maximum of the two valuations will win, right? Because that's the rule of the game. It's a first price auction. The highest valuation will win, and then Selena will get this bid. So the expected value, and there we can again do some math in the background, is actually 2/3, and her expected revenue is 1/3. And it turns out that this is exactly the same as in the second price auction. And that was actually quite a revealing thing in auction design or in mechanism design that led to a very famous theorem that is the so-called revenue equivalence theorem. And it says that when valuations are secret and independent, there's no reserve price, then the item goes to the highest winner, or the highest bidder, then all auction mechanisms are revenue equivalent. Let's talk a little bit more about different auction designs. The Dutch auction. The Dutch auction, which I briefly mentioned before, is an auction where Selena starts with a high price, maybe even a very high price, and then she continuously lowers the price, and the first person that accepts the price are declared the winner, and then they get this good at the price that they accepted. And the winner actually pays the price that they accepted. And you can already see probably that this is very similar to the first price auction, right? Because you are actually paying what you bid in a way. So again, you don't want to bid truthfully, because every time that you bid truthfully, you will lose. Or you will have 0. So if we do this analysis, it also turns out that the Dutch auction is, again, strategically equivalent and revenue equivalent to the static first price auction. Strategically equivalent because they are, essentially the same, just under a different code. Yeah, I think the rest I said. So let's recap a bit. We analyzed important auction formats, the static first price auction, the static second price auction. So here we varied the pricing rule, like what is actually the bid that what are you paying? And then the English clock auction and the Dutch clock auction that are basically building on top of this pricing rule and adding some dynamic to it. And we saw, or at least you have to believe me, that first price and Dutch auctions are strategically equivalent. Here it's not efficient, or it's not the best strategy for a player to actually bid their valuation. Right? We had that before, because whenever you win, you gain nothing. The second price and English auction are also strategically equivalent. And there, actually, it is a truthful equilibrium where you just bid your valuation. All 4 auctions are revenue equivalent, and having a reserve price actually increases the expected revenue and beats just posting a price where you just don't have an auction. All right, let's start a little bit with a discussion. So in the model that I showed you, it was important that to assume that the bidders' valuations are actually independent from one another, right? So that the valuation of Alice did not in any way be related to the valuation of Bob. Do you think that there are different situations where this assumption might not be sensible in the real world? Somebody has any idea? Or you can also say where it's sensible. Where is it sensible to assume that everybody has their own idea about how much a thing is worth? Yes?
Hello, Sukhmeet. So when emotions are involved, you may have value of one item more. Like, hey, this is the car I really, really like, but this is the car that my dad traveled on, blah, 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 blah. Or the house that you're buying back if it was sold, the parental house.
Yeah, that's a good one. If you have like some personal attachment, yeah, definitely. Something else, maybe without the emotions. I mean, emotions are always involved, but some other area of goods where this makes a lot of sense. What? Rare? Yeah, for example. Yeah. Paintings, for example. A painting, you know, like, and you have to make a little assumption again, like you're maybe the final buyer. You don't like just buy it because you think you can sell it somewhere else. But if you look at the picture, some of them, or of the painting, some of them you like, right? Like you think like, oh, I want to have this. And some other person looks at the same picture and they say like, oh, never gonna buy this, right? Here the valuations are like completely independent. They're completely independent, right?
Well, this is more or less kind of adding to the point that I made early on yesterday, but more or less brand loyalty. So, for example, if I see on eBay, for example, an auction for a, let's say, item from this company called Mischief. If you guys heard of Big Red Boots before, that's the same company, or the Lil Nas X Demon Shoe, for example. If I see a product from them going for a lower price, or a price that's within my budget, for example, then something like that could have influence on what I could actually buy, more or less, compared to like something, compared to like sneakers from like, I don't know, Nike or something like that. I'd have a lot more valuation for a sneaker from Mischief, for example.
Okay, yeah. So your personal preference in a way, right? Like it's
Yes.
similar to the painting, right? Like some of this, and another person wouldn't have that preference for this brand, right? And they like Nike more or something. Yeah.
Right.
Where is this not sensible? Just, I think, the much more interesting case. There's somebody needs a mic over there.
Hi. In Brazil, we have like government licitations for like any buy that the government wants to do, like has to be a bid, but most times like the same person like puts 3 or 4 bids, and just for like to because it's necessary to have more than one, but it's the same person, so like it's not independent.
It's the same person. No, I'm talking about the true valuation. I'm not talking about bids here. I'm talking about the true valuation.
Oh.
Yes?
Yeah, something, for example, like something that has extractable value, for example, a bond from a government or something,
Yeah.
might go to auction, and it has like you can assume bids won't, like values won't be independent because you have like an underlying minimum value.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. So also, if you think about these like seized Bitcoin auctions, right? Like I think the FBI or whatever agency is selling a bunch of Bitcoin. Then I mean, of course, like the valuations are independent because you know everybody knows what is a Bitcoin worth today. The question is just like how much is your risk preference on top of that? How much you're willing to buy on top of to pay on top of that? Another very famous example here is drilling rights. Right, so if the government, for example, says that we have this new piece of land and we know that there's oil below that, and now you can bid, like the oil companies can bid to actually buy the land and drill oil, then of course these valuations are highly correlated because there will be oil. The only question is, you know, like how much oil these companies think or analyze themselves individually is there. I mean, the valuation still might be different, right? Like one company has maybe a different screening technology and knows it a little bit better, but the other one's still using an older technology. So these valuations are still highly correlated, but they don't need to be the same.
So like used car sale, like used cars, when they are auctioned or foreclosures, they are very, very competitive. So valuations are almost realistic.
Yes, but maybe somebody, and that is maybe from my own experience, I have some friends that actually know cars much better, and they actually know this car from this year is actually prone to these problems. So, and I would never know that, right? So that again, like it's highly correlated. Like everybody knows that this is a BMW from this year, so it's roughly between that and this price. But then, like the private information is changing the valuation a bit.
Also, they might be knowing that this is a car that came from an accident or something, right? So every time people go in, they don't go in with, we will buy it for a bigger price, right?
Yeah.
They'll always be like, we'll buy it for a cheaper price.
Yeah. Yes, and these are so-called common value auctions, which is a kind of a special scenario. There's a unique valuation of item, and each bidder has some private estimate of this. Right? This is what I said before, that there's some signal to this valuation, or the valuation comes through the fact that there's some private estimate, but at the end there's some underlying like true valuation. In these cases, it is observed that sealed bid auctions tend to give higher revenue than dynamic auctions. So here we are kind of, in reality, we are breaking, or we have to observe that the revenue equivalence theorem is broken, unfortunately. Why do you think is that? Yes?
Microphone?
She has a...
Because you have some kind of personal, you might have a personal value that you've put on that item, and if you see what other people, how other people are, how they've valued that item, you might think to yourself, oh, wait, I've overestimated the value of this, and then bid just above that next person. Meanwhile, if you hadn't seen it, you would have, you know.
Yeah, that's actually true. So in the example of this oil drilling, if everybody just submitted their bid, they, you know, the best thing that they could do, and let's say we're in like a second price auction, is to just bid like your estimate of how much oil is there, right? But in a dynamic auction, you can actually learn from bids from others, right? This is what I mentioned briefly. But if you think that the valuation is quite high, but you see a lot of people dropping out already, you think like, wait, we are all bidding for the same oil well, right? And oil price is known to everybody. Why are all these people dropping out? Maybe I have a little bit of a bad estimation of the situation. Maybe I did something wrong or something. So then you start to lower your bid, maybe even go lower than your actual valuation, because you think that you don't trust your own valuation anymore, right? And of course, this is like, you cannot do that in the sealed auction where you just write your number on an envelope and go. But on the dynamic auctions, you can learn from the bids of others. Yeah, a little bit more formally, there's no convergence of estimates, right? You cannot reduce the noise and the statistical noise in this situation. There's actually a name for this. This is called the winner's curse. That is basically in these auctions, whoever won, you actually know that, oh, they overbid. Because they are the ones that have the most likely misestimate of the situation, right? Because it's very rare that actually the highest bid for some common value is actually the true valuation, right? It's mostly the average of it, and yeah, this is called the winner's curse. Then for the equivalence of revenues, it is observed in practice that first price auctions lead to higher revenue than second price auctions. First price auctions lead to higher revenue than second price auctions. Revenue means Selena is getting more money. We showed before that in the analysis, it shouldn't be the case, right? She should earn the same amount of money in both if she runs both of these things. There's some assumption that we do that fails. Which one could it be? Yes.
The person should bid 50% of that assumption fails of valuation.
Yeah, that's correct. So we showed that people or actually bidders should bid half their valuation. But this is super counterintuitive, right? I'm sure like nobody of you thought in bidding in eBay to bid half of their valuation. And the underlying thing is that people are risk averse. So in economics, we would say that they need to be risk neutral, who actually, bid this half valuation. But it turns out that people like to win more than, they are more happy to win more often, but with a lesser revenue. So that means they are overbidding, right? They are bidding too much. And too much bidding means that Selena wins a little bit more. One question, would you rather prefer $1 million with 50% probability or $300,000 with 90% probability? Who would prefer the $1 million with 50% probability? Who would prefer the 300,000 with 90% probability? Okay, there's nobody that prefers the $1 million with 50% probability. A few, okay. Actually, the expected revenue is much higher than in the first case, right? Because the expected revenue is $500,000. In the other one, it's 90% of $300,000. And so, again, from basic economic theory, you are all irrational. It doesn't make sense. But there's a thing that is called risk aversion. And that is, people tend to reduce risk, to reduce uncertainty. And getting $300,000 with 90% probability it sounds rather safe. Like you almost for sure get $300,000. But with 50%, 1 million, you might bite your ass if you don't get it. And this is actually, one of the reasons why Alice might not want to bid 50% of her valuation, maybe a bit more. So we briefly touched upon this before. Front running, a big problem, especially in blockchain auctions, where computer systems may have front runners. Those are special nodes that can see an incoming bid, and then they can react with their own bid based on that bid, but make it look like that their own bid was created first. And I think I gave a nice example before where you can see actually that there's this 20 and 5, and you pretend that you participated also in this thing and put in a bit of 19. If you assume that you're prone to front running, which of the 4 auctions would you prefer and why? Yes? Dutch auction, you would prefer why?
Because it's going down and there is no like excess for them, like they will pay like the price that they're willing to pay.
Okay. Other opinions? Yeah.
Maybe a what is it? First price sealed auction, or
okay. Why?
Because I guess all participants would have to submit their valuation or the price that they're willing to pay at a time, right? And maybe there's not an opportunity for a bot to front run that.
Okay. Other opinions? Yeah.
Maybe a second price dynamic auction. Well, if you are running an auction, you want to maximize your expected revenue, right? Is that the?
I mean, if you're the
like you're
auctioneer,
the one that is offering the item.
let's say you're from the outside and you're designing a system where you are neither bidder nor auctioneer,
okay.
but you want to reduce front running, the potential for front running.
Oh, okay. No, then yeah, probably like a first price auction or something like sealed, so it's harder to front run.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at this here. So front, yeah.
This has something to do with MEV attacks.
Yeah, MEV X, I don't know, but it's minor extracted values, right? This is like one of the problems there, that they can see bits coming in and then react faster than those bits. Yeah. So somebody said before Dutch auction that probably wouldn't be a good idea because you can basically Fred is the front runner and he waits for the first bidder to signal accepting the price, but then actually Fred makes the signal first and he's guaranteed to win, but at the lowest possible price, right? So it would not be a good idea to do that. A second price auction, if Fred is auctioneer, he can shill bid successfully. That is, the example that I gave before. When a higher bid arrives, he can create a bid slightly under that and basically make sure make sure that it appeared as it was created first, and then drive up the price. In a first price auction, if Fred is bidder and he can open the seals, he can win by slightly outbidding the highest bid. But still he has to bid the highest price, right? So this is kind of costly. This, of course, needs, if you have poor data privacy, that is definitely an attack vector, but yeah, you need ways to circumvent this. But it's still probably best to run the English auction here. Another thing is sniping. In a dynamic auction with a fixed bidding time window, sniping is placing a highest bid as late as possible, so other bidders can't react and overbid you. The practice leads to low revenue, particularly bad when done by a front runner in microseconds. Whoever did bid sniping here? There's somebody, yeah, or there? You can, explain? No, the colleague next to you.
Next to me?
Yeah, on eBay, you wait until the last second and then you
yeah.
put in a little bit higher bid.
Yeah, that's actually also what I did. I even had like multiple windows back in the day when the internet wasn't that good, you would refresh in the one window to see the last price, and then in the other window already had the, like kind of the accepting price thing. You just needed to put in the numbers, click OK, and then try to get in, right? And that's obviously not good, right? You don't want to have bid sniping, because it just leads to bad bad outcomes. Like let's say especially on eBay, like it went like for 7 days. And for 6.5 days, nothing happened. And then suddenly it starts. And then, especially most of the bids were done in the last few seconds. I mean, even looking at this doesn't make sense. It's maybe a very hard question, especially if you don't look at the next slide. What kind of auction could we do to prevent sniping? And it's not one that we talked about. Yes?
You could do something like create a penalty for late bidders or something like that.
Okay, penalty. Yeah, maybe over there it was quicker.
Maybe you could have like a delay timer so that it then extends the period of time.
Yeah,
like
that's a good one.
Home auctions.
Yeah, that is the so-called activity rule. That basically says that if there's no new bid coming in the last 10 seconds, then the auction just ends. But if there's a new bid, we extend the end of the auction by 10 seconds. There's some problem with that, obviously, right? What could be the problem? It can go forever, right? Like of course, it gets more expensive, but it's a little bit prone to trolling, right? And especially when it's quite important for you to know the end of the auction, then this might be a problem. You know, if you have tight schedules, maybe for example on Polkadot we had these tight schedules of auctions, and we waited like only half a day or a day before the next auction. Having this thing could really mess up the schedule, right? There might be another idea where you could also have some requirement on the bids that need to come in after the end of the auction or at the very end. You could force it to be exponentially higher, right? Like for example, there's this minimum increment that says like you need to bid at least €2 more to keep it going. But these €2 could actually go up over time, right? So that the longer it extends, the more you need to bid. And at some point you need to bid $50 more to keep it going, and then you kind of force it to end. Another idea is the candle auction. This is an auction format from quite long ago. I think it's, this is, I think in England. The candle auction is very old, I think from the 16th century or even before that. It's a dynamic first price auction with random ending time. And what happened there is that there was literally a candle in front with the auctioneer, and he would take bids as long as the candle was still going. The idea is nobody knows when this candle goes out, really. And this actually reduces the case for sniping, right? Because you couldn't snipe it because you didn't know when it ends. For it to be sniping, you need to know the ending time. So this is very similar to the first price auction. These auctions haven't been applied that much. Also, there's not that much research in academia. I'm writing one paper about it. I hope it comes out soon. It never really took off, let's say. One of the big problems here, of course, is that it's quite tedious, obviously, to wait for the candle to go out. I think there's probably also some ways for the auctioneer to kind of rig the system and make the auction go out at some more, whenever some bidder wins that he likes or something. Yeah. So everybody keeps bidding, and at some point it randomly ends.
Actually, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Might it make sense to combine a candle auction with a second price system?
It might. I don't think so. I know that it doesn't, but I don't know the answer yet. So we thought about this, and there was some reason why this wasn't the case. I'm thinking about it, and then I will tell you. But yeah, in general, you would say that okay, yeah, you can make a second price auction out of it. I mean, it would be much clearer with the bidding, right? Like here again, in the first price auction, you have the same issue. How do you actually want to bid? You don't want to bid exactly what you have, because even if you win, you kind of lose. So yeah, Polkadot, as you probably know, actually implemented those. They are basically on the way to be being deprecated, because we are switching the way that we allocate core time. We will talk about that tomorrow. But still, I mean, those auctions did a very good job. Those were probably for sure the biggest application of candle auctions ever. I think there's still today, once per year in some English pub, there's some people that gather together and still have a candle auction, a real candle auction. But yeah, other than that, this auction format never took off. But it turned out that in the case of blockchain, this was actually quite useful, because we could determine after the whole auction ended randomly when the auction actually ended. And that completely eroded front running, right? Because you didn't know when the thing ended, so you didn't know which bit you wanted to front run. It's quite nice. Okay. Let's have the last game. So we will be... I still have some more explanation to do. So we will have... So we will have the NFT auctions now. So you now have the chance to bid on one professionally created NFT by an experienced artist. There are 13 unique NFTs, which are minted up to 3 times. It will be random. So I don't know yet how much they are minted exactly, because we had some fluctuating number of people joining and leaving the games, and so we will see at the end. But what's important is you don't know which NFT you're bidding for right now. You just know that you're bidding on the expectation of one of them, like everybody else, right? Like you don't know which one you will get, you don't know how the collection will actually look like at the end, but you know that if you win an NFT, you get one. You will be able to use the budget that you accumulated during the last Academy games. So, you were basically gathering points. Those points were translated into US dollars, and those US dollars you can now use in the auctions. So everything that you will not use for bidding, you will receive at the end of the Academy in some form, right? Maybe we send you KSM that equals the US dollar amount. Maybe we find some other way, but you will be compensated, right? So if you don't like NFTs, if you don't want the NFT, if you didn't win the NFT, you will get the equivalent amount of the budget that you have. Of course, those people that won an NFT pay what they bid in the auction. And there are different rules. We will see that. What's very important is 100% of the revenue goes to the artist, right? Like we're not keeping anything. We basically accumulate all the winning bids, and then we give everything to the artist. You are randomly assigned to one of 3 different auction formats. And I will explain the different auction formats in a minute. Let's first look at the artist and the NFTs. So it's Charmaine Kwan, I hope I say it correctly. She's a Hong Kong artist and inspired by the city's historic neon signs, and is dedicated to preserving the essence through her art. She has a contemporary approach. She uses diverse media, includes traditional and LED neon lights digital art sculpture to give a modern twist to the classic neon art style. And she has focuses on or reflects the urban environment and cultural changes, merging nostalgia with future possibilities. And she has a fine art degree from the UK and authored books on traditional Chinese painting. And she had several exhibitions internationally and collaborated with a lot of different brands. Let's see. Not coming over. So that's her. She collaborated with different brands. I don't want to go through everything, but I think it's quite an achievement, the brands she worked with. She has won a lot of rewards or awards, and she's very active in having exhibitions, installations. This is some stuff that she did. Kind of nice. This is this neon art style. Yeah, pretty cool. And these are the NFTs. So I put them into a collage, right? They are individual NFTs. And as I said, you are bidding on the expectation of getting one of those in some collection, right? Everybody, you won't see which one of these. Everybody just sees, basically buys or bids on the right to get one of these. And I will do that randomly. I will see the winners and I will determine randomly who gets what. There's no choosing here. I will also post in Discord maybe. She also did a very nice she also said a little bit about the NFT collection. I don't think it makes sense for me to read all of this. I will later send that in Discord.
Question?
Yes.
It wasn't clear. Do we?
Where are you?
Right here. Do we not? I mean, if we bid and we don't win the auction, do we lose that amount?
No. If you bid and you don't win, you still have the money.
Okay.
Yes? What chain it will be minted on? So I haven't decided yet, but it's pretty sure it will be maybe, Asset Hub, I guess. They are tradable.
We have?
No. So this is actually a nice case. So this is actually a nice, so your valuation might be higher, right? But you're budget constrained. You can't bid more than you have. So that is the example I did before. Maybe your valuation for it is some number, but you cannot bid as much because you don't have as much money. No, there's no leverage, there's no borrowing, there's no lending, there's no minting of money. I'm sorry. So I will explain to you the different formats. And now I think it's important for you to pay attention so you understand what you're up to. Okay, guys, listen. So format 1, as I said, you will be randomly allocated to one of the 3 different formats. The initial bidding phase And this is the activity rule that we talked before. The initial bidding phase lasts 30 seconds. Every valid bid resets the timer. You need to bid at least 30 cents more than the previous highest bid. Whoever has the highest bid at the end wins, and the winner pays their bid. So it's a first price auction. Does that make sense? So the timer goes down. Whenever somebody bids, the timer goes up. Goes up, goes up, but you need to bid 30 cents more than before, right? You will always be playing with 3 other people in one auction. There's 3 people in one auction. 3 in total, you and 2 others. Then we have the candle auction. As I said, it's from the 16th century. So this auction lasts exactly 4 minutes. But then there's a candle mechanism that randomly determines after the auction ended. The mechanism can never be in that phase, right? So in first minute, the candle auction can never end. Then the red phase starts, which is 3 minutes. And here, basically, every second, the auction could end. And it's uniformly distributed, so every second has the same probability of ending the auction. But you won't see whether the auction actually ended until after the auction. It's a little bit tough to digest, but I think it makes sense. Any question? So you bid for 4 minutes, then the computer randomly allocates when within the first 3 minutes the auction actually stopped. Then we look at the state of the auction in that second, and whoever won gets the NFT. The third one is the hard close auction, which is simply a dynamic first price auction, similar to eBay. The auction lasts for 4 minutes. Whoever has the highest bid at the end wins and pays their bid. Yes. You can see the other bits. So to reiterate, we will divide all you into groups of 3. Then we will put 3 of you into one randomly allocated type of auction, one of the 3. You only play one auction, right? You only play one auction. Whatever is the format, you play. There's some winner at the end. The winner gets the NFT, pays their bid. If there's some surplus, so if you have 20 euros or $20, you pay 10 for the NFT, the 10 you still get afterwards on top, as payout with all the other ones. Whoever didn't win gets simply their money back.
So just one of us will get the NFT?
One of the 3 gets the NFT. There's only one. Yeah, there's only one NFT per market. There's only one round.
Wait.
No. So there's let's say there's 90 people in the room. Then there will be 30 markets. So 30 NFTs. Then, on average, 10 of them will play the auction, the candle auction, 10 of them will play the activity rule, and 10 will be the hard close rule. No, the others get their money back. I mean, it's an auction, right? An auction only makes sense if there's less of the NFTs than there are people, right? Otherwise, we don't need to make an auction. So 30 seconds. Yeah. Well, yeah. If there was somebody bid and no other bid comes in, then the thing ends in 30 seconds. Yeah, it resets until there's no new bid coming in. And this kind of 30 cents guarantees that it doesn't take forever, because at some point, of course, everybody runs out of money, right? Okay, are we set? All right. Any more questions? Or there and there, yeah. You need to understand. I think it's important.
Just want to make sure the fund. So if I didn't win the auction, so how do I spend money?
You don't spend money. You have money. You go into the auction with $20. You don't win. At the end, you have $20. At the end of the academy, I will send you $20.
That's not in like food voucher.
No, it's
yeah, because someone asked the question.
It's not in food stamps. No.
Thank you.
No, I don't want to commit to it now, but I could send you KSM worth of $20. Maybe I sent you DOT worth of $20. Maybe USDT. That is like something I still need to figure out because last time we did it in KSM, but I would love to do it in USDT, but I don't know if I can make it. So you will receive something that is worth $20 and it will be crypto.
So no like gas fee or weight fee, because someone asked, right? Just to confirm that. So you got 20 left and you have that in some sort of KSM or other tokens value, but that's in 20, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Are you ready, Andrew?
Okay, I'm gonna post the link.
Can I ask a question?
So,
sorry, regarding format 2. So
Sorry, what?
in the candle auction,
yeah,
we have candle phase of 3 minutes.
Yes.
And you mentioned that it can stop like in any time,
yes,
like with the same probability. But the auction continues till
the auction continues the whole 3 minutes.
But what's the idea? Why it's not just stop?
Well, let's talk about that later.
Okay.
That's just the rule of the game.
Okay.
Okay. Good. All right, let's go.
So just so I'm gonna open up the room, but don't just like leave it there. Hit refresh maybe a couple times because I think like this internet is dropping the connection to our server a little bit. That's why some of you were like not getting in randomly. So anyways, okay, I'm gonna post it now.
Please click the link. We still need a few more people. I mean, if you don't join, it's also fine. You don't get the chance. It's fine. Still missing a few people. Please click the link. Hit refresh also. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna start.
small potatoes, like 28 gig. It's very. What? Yeah. That's why actually it's like several projects getting.
Oh, you're talking.
For the first 2 days, they will have those.
Which one do you have? 35? Oh, it starts.
But they're tired. But I think it was fun. But I didn't find it fun.
All right, have fun.
Oh, okay. Send me a message then. Dude, you're loud. What's wrong with that big browser you got?
I mean, yeah, it's suspicious. It's always you.
Just a bit. It could be, but I'm using one too. But
they're reselling
it's like it makes the connection not so good, right? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Did you send me a message? Give you a link.
Oh, I'm Kendall, so easy for me. Sneaking some smart contract.
Send me a message on Discord.
It's also only integers, so.
Yes, the guy posted the link.
Hi, sister. It's me. You will see this.
Yours the highest price?
Yeah, because they are waiting. Which is 3 minutes. It could and for now they still have like a few seconds to.
I don't think it's impossible. You just put no, I mean you put same price, but
It should be one link to get.
For example, okay, so you turn red, so it means that now you random. Okay, it's not me. It's speed up. So I kind of like should wait until this. But the thing is, if you ask at right, then it might lose. So now we don't know yet. Yeah, he probably will. Yeah, smart. Yeah, that's smart.
Money. Yeah, I will. Don't worry. No, I can't.
Are people playing? Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay, all good.
Yeah, it's because it's like it's on the higher side. Yeah, so like I don't know how much they have like to the last second and just
really?
Yeah, like the highest price till now is $1. Like I think everyone can really support that. Like does it make sense to put anything? I put like $2.
I don't have valuation. Then can you think about that? It's zero.
Everything on the left side.
It's about capital. For me, it's the second.
Right. Who's still is some? Are you still playing? Is somebody still playing? Okay. 1 minute. Okay.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, I expect once they have money, I would like to see if we could like use it on our private accounts. I think I would put $10 plus what I already have.
Sorry about that. That's about capital. You okay, we see the years.
No.
I know I will
Depends how you. Yes, I understand, but it depends how your relation to that
You didn't have to leave. You win, you won.
All right. Still one group. Okay. Should be fine. Ah, they're done. Ah, no. They're done. Okay, great. I hope you had a little bit of fun. Like, tell me some stories. What happened in your group? Yes, over there. Give him a mic.
So I kept raising the amount on the bid.
Which auction format have you?
Sorry, I forgot that. I'm really sorry. I was too focused on the bidding part.
So did you see like different colored bars?
Yeah.
Okay, then it was the candle auction.
No, sorry. It was yellow colored bar.
No, then not. Then you have like did the timer reset or not?
Yes, it was reducing. The timer kept on reducing.
Sure, but did it reset when somebody bid?
Sorry, I was too.
Okay, don't remember much.
yeah. I was just focused on the. I was kept checking the price of the bid, how much higher it was going, and then I waited for the last moment and I sniped it.
Okay. So you're probably in the closed rule. No, what was it called? Hard close rule.
Okay.
So you won?
Yeah, I won.
Oh, nice. How much did you like? Did you put everything that you have?
No.
Oh wow.
So $15.
$15, and how much do you have left?
I am still having $20.
Oh, nice. So what was your valuation actually? Can you say that, or do you
So
know that?
I started with $1.
No. I'm not talking about your bid.
Okay,
I'm talking about. So imagine you have infinite amount of money. How much would you be willing to be paying there?
Maybe max $50 or something.
50 euros? Okay.
Yeah.
Who has more valuation than that?
Me.
Okay, tell me. How much would you be willing to pay?
I think probably up to $500. I had a 70. And the concept here is that essentially when you
Guys,
look at
listen to your colleague.
When you look at the art world, right, it's all about market making. So art houses, for example, they market make their artists. They set the base price. So if you're also a collector, you could also market make your collection or art that you're pricing it. So I would have gone and listed it, or showcase the artwork in my own gallery. So that's why.
Okay, 500,
Yep.
nice. By the way, for those, I think there were like just a few people, maybe 3 people that didn't make it in because their connection dropped. We can play another auction only for you guys. Don't worry. Just come after that to us and tell us. Okay, cool. Who has a higher valuation than 500? Valuation? The valuation is something that is true to yourself, right? Like, I'm not talking about your budget. I'm talking about your valuation. Who has a higher valuation than 500? Okay, nobody. So you had the highest valuation. Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you take the mic? I think in Cambridge, was it? Some guy said like he would be willing to bid up to $3,000 or something. 2 ETH. And at the time, ETH was like 2K or something. 3K, okay, like somebody in the first one was willing to bid up to 6K. And then we asked, like, who didn't bid at all because they don't like NFTs? Okay, you. You didn't care for it? Good. So that is quite an interesting observation, right? Like, it's the same good. One person is willing to buy it for $500 and the other one is not willing to buy it at all. What do you think about the different auction form? Yeah, you wanted to say something? Give him a mic.
Yeah, I'm Rachel. So I didn't bid, not because I don't like NFTs, but I like NFTs where I know after buying what am I getting, like in terms of what will be the the benefit of me having it, and that makes sense to me, and mostly I prefer for those which represent certain culture in Web3 mostly, which certain group of NFT DJs kind of work on those NFTs mostly.
Okay, and how much did you bid? Oh, let's say how much of zero. Okay.
Yeah. Well, my approach was like he said why, and then when I thought why would I buy this NFT, and I was like I want to buy it's kind of memory because I will look at this NFT and remember that I bought using points of like a lot of games that I played, and my auction was the 30-second one, so I was putting bids, but once we reached my maximum amount available, someone put more than me, and they got it.
Yeah. Okay, this is like a real problem, right? That I was pointing out several times. Your valuation might not meet your budget. Like you wanted to buy maybe for higher, but you didn't have a budget. And this is important to understand the concept. Like valuation is something inside of you, but it doesn't mean that you can actually bid up until your valuation. Yes?
If I may, in this case, I think there is also the other way around observation. So I never bought any NFT. I'm not into NFT, but I received this free money, and I bet everything that I had. I was lucky to win, but only because I had a huge budget, huge, $59.
Oh, that's good.
It was the hard
close.
close.
Did you snipe or?
But I tried to go slower, high, but they were competitive, and then at the last second, that is everything.
Yeah.
But something that I would never do in the real life.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting, right? Like, maybe you don't, like if you have a high budget and high valuation, you maybe don't want to snipe because somebody else could snipe you, right? So it might actually be good to drive up the price at the very beginning to kind of destroy these small bidders that you know you want to outcompete, that might actually be able to snipe you, but you want to push out of the market early on, right?
I just wanted to win.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think you mentioned also something else, that it would be different if it's your own money or something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, another thing. So if you give the opportunity to have more auction, then I can save some money to participate on other.
Okay.
Otherwise, I just I won because I had more money than others. It's kind of unfair.
All right. Yeah, I was also a little bit referring to some other concept that is also quite irrational. That people value the same amount of money differently when they worked for it versus when they just got it, which doesn't make any sense, right? Like 30 euros should be 30 euros. But people are much more likely to spend 30 euros when they just found it on the street than when they actually worked for it, which, you know, might be one of the reasons why people bid here. And if I asked you, hey, you have to pay from your own pocket, then maybe the numbers would be lower. Maybe they would be higher because somebody would go up to 500. Let's see.
Yeah, like the guy that bet with the Ether. So
with these, yeah. I mean, yeah. It would be kind of interesting to do that once. But over there.
Yeah. So the one before Mario was actually same action as I did. I was the winner with 30, and as it was a candle action, I knew that the best way to like win it, because I just wanted it's just to like maximize my time as a leader. So what I did was I was racing dollar by dollar. I didn't care about the decimals even, because that was just took longer to type out, and I saw it go up. I just put it up, like dollar up every time.
Yeah.
And it just meant that at some time I still had like a lot of money, so I said like, oh shit, these guys are just not enough money for you. So I just kept going up until.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually what I said before. Yeah. So was it somebody here that actually was kind of, let's say, disadvantaged by the candle auction mechanism, that was actually winning at the end, but then, you know, the candle auction turned it around and said actually the auction ended to a time where you haven't been winning? Here, you? So you were the highest bidder at the end, but you didn't get the NFT? Yeah, that's one of the big disadvantages, of course, with the candle auction. And there's a concept of efficiency in auction theory, and efficiency means an auction mechanism is efficient if it goes to the bidder with the highest valuation. So we don't know whether your valuation is actually higher than the other person that actually won, but at least the bid was higher, right? So there might be some small violation here. If we look at the results, we can see the average final price was $20, the number of bids. So what we see is that the hard close auction, actually there's significantly less bids than in the candle, in the candle auction, right? So this might suggest a little bit sniping. So people actually didn't care too much for all the time before. And actually, if you look from it from game theoretic perspective, there's like little reason why you should before the last second, right? Because why? Interestingly enough, and that is something that I'm continuously puzzled about because it happens in every PBA, the number of bids in the activity rule is actually quite small compared to the candle auction. I would have thought that people don't bid and then at the end they keep overbidding. Like they really go on like for a long time and there's a lot of bids. But it appears that, you know, the activity rule, a lot of people bidding before actually the timer ends. And then the candle auction, which has a significantly higher number of bids, which I'm also a little bit puzzled about. But yeah, there's a lot of bids happening there. If we look at the average winning price and compare it to the final price, we can see that, of course, for the hard close auction and for the activity rule, that's identical, right? Because it makes sense. The last highest bid was the bid that got paid. The only rule that didn't have this was the candle auction, right? But not the highest bid at the end counted, but the bid whenever the candle auction decided when it should end. So we can see here as a perspective of my perspective as a auctioneer, I have lower revenue, right? I could have gotten 17.50, but I only got 13.64. Okay, very nice.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Is it possible to see the highest bid amount and like for each auction that went through and like what is the time frame it came in, just to see the patterns?
It is possible, but not now. I
Thank
would
you.
need to look into the raw data, and then I can, if you write me a message and write me which metrics you're interested in, I can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, I think there's some nice, I just want to briefly show two of the other NFT collection, this one here, and this one. So that was from Cambridge, from Berkeley. That was quite nice. Very non-conceptual art, conceptual art. That's Rubentopia from the very first one. There was actually quite some interesting stuff happening a few days ago. You can put in the numbers yourself. And there's a little bit what we saw kind of with this weird statue, right? Like somebody puts like some ridiculous amount of request, and then hopes somebody thinks like, oh, that's actually a bargain, I can maybe sell it for twice or something. Okay, yeah, I will still send you this to read a little bit about it. And yeah, ultimately this is, wait, let me, okay, yeah, this is it. I have some further reading here. I wrote some some analysis on the historical auctions on Kusama and Polkadot. We applied a candle auction there. In these documents, there's also much more in-depth explanation about how it works. And yeah, that's it from my side for today. Any questions? Yes, over there.
It's very interesting why you guys decided on the candle auctions for Kusama and Polkadot.
Yeah, so one reason was to avoid sniping, because you couldn't snipe. And another very important one is because it's super hard to keep bids secret and to avoid front running. And there's like, you know, the front running is much harder in the candle auction because you don't know when the auction actually would end, right? So in general, this auction format is much more robust to the big problems that blockchain face. And that is also, like, these problems can be fixed quite easily in a legal framework, let's say, when, you know, like when you have a lot of control over who is participating and all that stuff. So this is the reason why this candle auction is not that present in real life. But in blockchain, you know, we have all these restrictions, and it actually turned out that the candle auction offers some nice properties here. And also interestingly, I did some empirical research on them, and we played the auction formats also with like other students and analyzed the data, and it shows that the candle auction is actually quite efficient. So ex ante, so before I did this study, I was a little bit afraid that this auction mechanism of like getting a new winner that might actually be not the highest bidder actually leads to the fact that a lot of people are winning that shouldn't actually be winning, right? Because they have a lower valuation. It actually turns out that this is not true, which I'm super happy about. So the candle auction is quite efficient. Yes? Mike, yeah.
So regarding candle auction again, I'm just curious about the scale of this random time. Like it could be minutes, hours, days, weeks.
Yeah.
So what is the most optimal for now? Like, have you made the research?
I think the most optimal is the smallest unit because, you know, like everything that is not the smallest unit basically like makes a little sub game where it cannot end. But on Polkadot, I think we sample every 2,000 blocks or something. Every 2,000 blocks can end. But here on this one, I think it's actually nanoseconds or milliseconds, whatever Python has here. But yeah, but as small as possible, right? But I don't think you lose a lot if you do it a little bit more discreetly, right? Because on Polkadot, the auctions go for a few days, then it doesn't matter whether the increments are not that big. Or not that small, sorry. Okay, yes?
Hi, this is Felix. How do you set up the reserve price? Because if you set the reserve price to 0, it doesn't do anything, right? It's just you set it to 1, it's like your profit becomes 0.
So it depends on the underlying assumption that you do about the distribution of values. You can maximize the expected revenue given the reserve price. And in the very easy example that I showed, where the values are distributed independently and randomly between 0 and 1, you can mathematically show that the optimum is to set it at 0.5. But if you have a different distribution of values, you calculate it new and maybe the reserve price is somewhere else. But it's true, yeah, if you put the reserve price at 0, like your reserve price doesn't matter, and if you put it to 1, then they will lose every time, right? So there's some sweet spot between that. Okay. Yes, I think there's one more question there.
I'm very curious, did you observe any drawbacks in the current auction modeling, like in the system for Polkadot? Is it working in the way how you designed originally, or what did you guys learn through all the spirits of the Kusama and Polkadot auctions?
That's a good question. Yeah. So the auctions will be most likely be gone, right? They will be replaced by the core time market. I think the auctions worked very well for the beginning, and they worked very well to bootstrap the network and to create strong communities because they allowed for the crowd loans and all of that. And the individual auctions are working very nicely. I think I did some analysis that in 90% of the cases, the slot was actually allocated to the highest bidder. And I'm just assuming that the highest bidder is also the one with the highest valuation. So that was quite efficient. But I think one of the big problems is not really the auction itself, but the way that we auctioned off 2 years leases, which is a very long time. And you first needed to create a community to have a very strong project to even participate in the auctions, because since it's a very long time, this drives up the price, of course. So it was, like a big barrier of entry to some people, right? So, if somebody said oh, I have an idea, I want to start it on Polkadot, you were basically saying, well, okay, first start to get a slot, right? And then you can start. And I think, Gavin basically with his talk at Decoded kind of gave this different vision that makes total sense to do now, to actually go more into this more agile core time allocation where you give core time on a much smaller scale to different small projects that just need it today maybe and then not tomorrow anymore or something like this, right? So generally I would say the auctions worked very well. They did what they were intended to. There was no bug, there was nothing really bad going on, so that was quite nice. And it was these 2-year leases, I think, were a very good thing to do in the first 2 years of the network. And now we are just evolving and adjusting to the new situation by basically getting rid of these auctions and starting with the core time markets. But we will see more about that in the Polkadot economics lecture tomorrow. Okay, one more question.
Here.
So I don't know, will be read completely or have in parallel? Because
I'm not sure. I mean, the answer is always whatever governance decides. No? I mean,
no, because if you do the same with the cloud computing, you can
Yeah.
rent AC2 daily basis, but having a low price if
Yep.
you know.
I think, let's say it's totally up for discussion and up for the community. If somebody opens a proposal and says that I think we should allocate 20% of the course over 2 years, still through the old mechanism, and governance says yes, then this will happen. So I don't know. It depends on how the community decides. Yeah, but I would expect that the auctions at least become much less, they have, so right now we do 100% of the course, and I think this number will go down a lot, and maybe even so much so that there's no auctions, not in the 2 years at least periods at least. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Then I would say have lunch or something.